What happened? Why has your wife gone from this beautiful, loving, wonderful person you knew to this other kind of scary, kind of intimidating, maybe a little bit crazy woman that you don't recognize? There are two things that might be going on. One might be that your wife hasn't changed all that much. We all create mental images of the people in our lives, and into that mental image goes all the things we know about them. Right? It's like if you imagine we had a little doll in our heads and there's a wife doll. We put on that she's beautiful and she's funny and she's loving and she's affectionate and she hates socks on the floor, right? Something like that. And in our brain, we construct this picture of her, and there's a feeling we feel when we look at it. And so whenever we think of her, we're like, oh yeah, that's who she is. I have a sense of who she is. So we create these images. One of my clients called them shadow images. And I love this. It's like you have a shadow person in your brain. But the thing about these shadow people, often we respond to the shadow person and not to the actual person in front of us, especially when somebody does things that we aren't used to. Something that doesn't fit with that shadow image. And sometimes that person does something that seems really out of character and really strange, and we actually create a whole new shadow person. This happens a lot in marriage, right? We have this beautiful, nice image of the early days of what our wife used to be like, and then we have what she is now. And often that one's a little bit scary or a little bit wild or in some way unsettling. And so if you have these two or possibly even more images of your wife in your mind, and then you're talking to the actual wife, who are you responding to? So often we're responding to one or the other image and not to the actual person who's in front of us. So it's very possible that your wife isn't that different than she used to be. It's also possible, the second option, that she's changed a lot. So where did your wife's change come from? Is it your fault? Did something go wrong? Is she broken? Is this who she's always wanted to be and you were holding her back? Or has she just like really lost it? Is she having a midlife crisis? What is going on? There are a lot of things that could prompt a change, a really significant change in your wife. There's a lot of possibilities, but there's one thing that I think is the most common. And that is that she started to recognize her internal conditioning and decided she wanted to change it. We all learn how to think and how to feel when we're really young. As children, as infants, we learn how to relate to our parents. We learn how to get affection. We learn how to get attention. We learn how to get our needs met. We learn essentially how to survive when we're completely reliant on other humans. And the ways that we learn to communicate, get affection, get love, stay safe, protect ourselves, all of those things that we learn then start to form our habits of thinking, our habits of believing, our habits of feeling. Over time, those habits get really ingrained and they start to become our personality, right? They start to become who we are and how we appear to the world and how we appear to ourselves. And at some point, something that shakes you up, shakes you out of your identity happens. Could be a loss or an accident. It could be a trauma or a powerful emotion, or it could be a huge success, right? It could be the birth of a child. It could be a really high high, but more often it's a really low low. And sometimes it's just a lot of mediocrity. Sometimes it's too much mediocrity over and over and over again. Something shakes you out powerfully enough that for a moment, you get this glimpse that there's other ways you could be in the world, that there's other things you could believe, there's other ways you could feel, there's other things you could think. And maybe you can't quite grasp them. Maybe you can't hold on to them, and maybe you fall right back into those old habits. But you've seen now, there's another way. I could be different. And you want that. You want to know more. You want to discover that. You want to know what is possible, because there are so many things that you always took for granted as just being true about you or about the world or about how things are, how people are, how relationships are. And now you're realizing that maybe that's not the whole truth. Once you get that glimpse, you tend to change because you start looking for ways to reach for it. And maybe you work with a great coach. Maybe you read a phenomenal book. Maybe you find some guidance and some ways to explore and discover and find new perspectives, change old patterns, deeply ingrained beliefs and emotions. Maybe you find really productive ways to do that, and maybe you don't, right? Maybe you reach to new experiences, to adventure, to new people, perhaps to new substances. If you don't find ways to work within your own mind, you reach for external sources of novel experience. But I would imagine if your wife has changed, if she has gone through a big transformation, this is probably why. Something for just a moment shook her out of what she was, out of who she was and what she believed. And for a moment, she was like, wait, there's another way to think. There's another way to reach for affection and love. There's a different way to feel safe, right? All these things that I took for granted as being true are no longer necessarily absolute truths. And so now she's reaching in one way or another for more evidence of that. Without knowing you, without knowing your wife, I can't really be more specific than that. I can't tell you exactly what's changed in her. What I can tell you is that it honestly does not matter how she changed or why she changed. What matters is why it's so important to you. What are your habits of reaching for affection? What is your ingrained belief about stability and safety? What ways did you learn as a small child to seek love and to get your needs met? And how is seeing her change threatening those things that you've believed, that you've held true for yourself? That is the important question. That is where the work is for you to regain your confidence, to move forward, rebuild who you are, and start creating that life of endless possibility that is within your reach, even in this time of pain and loss. I'm here to help you and support you on that journey. If you'd like to learn more about what I have to offer and how that works, please reach out, schedule a free strategy session with me. You can tell me all about your experience with this, about finding this woman who's gone from being your beloved wife to somebody you don't even recognize. And I can help you ask and answer that question. So what? What is this creating in you? What can we learn about you from this? And how can we move you forward, move you into that confident, bright, better, bigger future for yourself? The link is in the video description. And as always, if this video has been helpful for you, please subscribe and turn on those notifications. I have new videos coming out twice a week, Saturdays and Tuesdays. I would love to share them with you. Thanks for joining me.